Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something absolutely core for pediatric nursing students, that foundational chapter on the growth and development of newborns and infants. We want to cut through the noise and give you the essentials.
Absolutely. This is really high-stakes stuff. We're covering birth right up to that first birthday. The newborn period itself is just those first 28 days.
And why is this so crucial? You mentioned it's foundational.
It really is, because adequate growth and development, that's basically the #1 indicator of health for this age group. Mastering what's typical gives you, the nurse, the power to provide something called anticipatory guidance.
Getting ahead of the curve.
Exactly. Educating parents before a developmental stage or potential risk pops up, it's proactive care.
Okay, let's get our terms straight first. We often hear growth, development, maturation used almost interchangeably. Can we clarify?
Good idea. So growth is the easy one. It's just getting bigger. Increase in physical size, weight, head circumference, it's quantitative. Right. Development is more about function. It's the sequential gain of skills. Think walking, talking. Qualitative.
And maturation.
Maturation is about the systems themselves getting better at their job, like the liver or the digestive tract becoming more functional, more capable.
Makes sense. And development isn't random, is it? There are patterns.
Yeah.
Tell us about those two main principles for motor skills.
Right. Development follows predictable pathways. We look at cephalocaudal, that's head to tail.
Head control before walking.
Precisely. Gross motor skills follow this. Then there's proximodistal, which means center outward to the periphery.
Like shoulder control before finger control.
Spot on. This governs fine motor skills, gaining control closer to the body first, then moving out to the hands and fingers.
Okay, before we jump into the physical stuff, there's one concept you stressed is non-negotiable for premature infants: adjusted age. Why is this calculation so critical?
Oh, absolutely critical. If you have an infant born prematurely using their chronologic age to assess them, well, you'd think they were delayed.
Because they haven't had the same time to develop in utero.
Exactly. So you calculate the adjusted age. You subtract the number of weeks or months they were born early from their chronologic age.
And that's the age you use for plotting growth.
That's the age for plotting growth and for assessing developmental milestones. It ensures you're comparing apples to apples. Without it, you could cause unnecessary worry or start interventions that aren't needed.
Okay, that's clear. Let's move to part one, the physical journey. The text calls it dramatic, focusing on the hardware. And the speed is key, right?
The speed is just phenomenal. Think about this. Infants usually double their birth weight by 4 or 5 months.
Double it.
Double it. And they triple it by their first birthday.
Wow.
And length increases by about 50% in that year, too. Head circumference grows rapidly, around 10 centimeters, which is our big clue to that crucial brain growth happening inside.
Let's talk about how immature those systems are initially. Starting with the brain, the neurologic system. How do we assess an infant's state, and why does that matter for timing our care?
Well, the brain itself grows incredibly fast. It's half the adult weight by just 6 months. And control shifts from being involuntary, reflexive, to more voluntary. As nurses, we need to observe the infant's state of consciousness. There are 6 basic ones: deep sleep, light sleep, drowsiness, quiet alert.
That's the good one for interaction.
That's the sweet spot, quiet alert. Then there's active alert, and finally, crying. Knowing these helps you time things. You don't try to teach feeding cues when the baby is fast asleep or screaming. You wait for that quiet alert state.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And we see maturation in reflexes too, right? The shift from primitive to protective.
Yes, that's a key
Yeah.
transition. At birth, they have primitive reflexes, things like the Moro or startle reflex, rooting for the nipple, sucking. These are sort of whole body subcortical responses.
And they fade away.
Most do, yeah, within the first few months. The Babinski reflex, the one on the foot, can stick around up to a year, but the really crucial point for you as a nurse is this. If those primitive reflexes persist past when they should disappear, that's often a warning sign.
A neurological flag.
Could be. And as those fade, the protective reflexes emerge. These are things like neck rating or the parachute reaction when they sense a fall.
The ones that help them stay upright later on.
Exactly. They're vital for balance, for hitting milestones like sitting and walking. And unlike the primitive ones, these protective reflexes stay with us for life.
Moving to the heart and lungs, the cardiorespiratory system. There's immaturity here too, which means risk. What's the biggest clinical risk when an infant gets, say, a simple cold?
Their anatomy really puts them at risk. Their nasal passages are narrower, their tongue is proportionally larger, they have fewer air sacs, the alveoli,
So congestion is a bigger deal.
a much bigger deal. A simple cold, an upper respiratory infection can quickly become serious. Their chest wall is also more compliant, less rigid, making breathing less efficient. Add mucus blocking those narrow airways. It can lead to respiratory compromise quickly.
Even though the heart's doubling in size and the pulse rate is dropping.
Yeah, those changes are happening. The heart rate goes from maybe 120, 140 down closer to 100. Blood pressure rises. But the respiratory system's immaturity is the immediate danger zone, especially with infections.
Okay, let's talk digestion, the GI tract. You mentioned something fascinating about enzyme deficiency. Amylase and lipase are low until about 5 months. What does that mean for feeding?
Yes, and this is a huge teaching point for parents. Amylase breaks down complex carbs, lipase breaks down fats.
So things like cereals or purees.
Exactly. If you introduce complex solids too early, the baby literally can't digest them properly. It's ineffective and could even cause problems.
So the guidance has to be.
Stick to exclusive breastfeeding or formula for the first 6 months, or at least until the baby shows clear readiness signs. Milk has the simple, easily digestible nutrients they can handle.
And the text uses stool changes as a visual guide for parents, right?
It does, and it's helpful. You start with meconium, that dark, Tory stuff. Then it changes based on diet. Breastfed poop is often described as yellow and kind of seedy.
Like cottage cheese.
Yeah, that's a common comparison. Formula-fed stools tend to be firmer, maybe more like peanut butter consistency. Knowing what's normal helps parents track digestion and hydration.
Okay, we've covered the hardware. Let's shift to the software part 2. Cognitive and psychosocial development, starting with Erikson.
Erikson's big task for this first year is trust versus mistrust. This is absolutely fundamental.
A foundation for everything else.
Pretty much. Trust develops when the caregiver consistently, reliably meets the baby's needs, food, comfort, diaper changes. It teaches the infant that the world is, a safe and predictable place. Inconsistency breeds mistrust.
And Piaget gives us the cognitive angle with his sensorimotor stage. What are the key mental shifts we see?
Piaget breaks it down. Birth to 1 month is mainly reflexes. Then from 1 to 4 months, you get primary circular reactions.
Mining.
That's when they repeat actions centered on their own body simply because they feel good, like sucking their thumb over and over.
Okay, then what?
4 to 8 months bring secondary circular reactions. Now the focus shifts outward. They repeat actions to get a response from the environment, like shaking a rattle to hear the sound.
They're learning cause and effect.
Starting to, yes. And the last big piece in infancy, from 8 to 12 months, is coordination of secondary schemes.
Sounds complex.
It means they start combining actions intentionally to achieve a goal, they anticipate events, and this stage is marked by a huge milestone: object permanence.
Right. Knowing something exists even when they can't see it. That solidifies around 8 months. How does that suddenly change things socially?
It triggers anxiety, actually. Once they understand you still exist when you walk out of the room, boom, separation anxiety. They get distressed because they know you're somewhere else.
And strangers become scary too.
Yes, stranger anxiety often emerges around the same time. Unfamiliar faces seem threatening, especially if the trusted caregiver isn't right there. It's vital for nurses to explain to parents that these anxieties are actually healthy signs of cognitive and emotional development, not bad behavior.
That's a great connection. Okay, part 3. Motor skills and sensory perception. We know the directions head to tail, center out. Let's hit the big milestones.
Okay, gross motor. Head control gets pretty solid by 4 months. By 6 months, many can sit with support, often in that tripod position, leaning on their hands.
Then sitting alone.
Usually around 8 months, sitting unsupported. Crawling, often the real crawl with the belly off the floor, is around 9 months. And the big one, walking independently, averages around 12 months. But there's a wide range of normal there.
And fine motor. What's the key skill for starting to self-feed?
That would be the fine pincer grasp. Development goes from just batting at objects around 4 months to grasping a rattle at 5, transferring things hand to hand by 7 months.
But the pincer grasp is different.
Right. That's using the thumb and forefinger together precisely to pick up small things, like pieces of cereal. Usually happens around 10 months. That's a big green light for trying small, safe finger foods.
What about senses? What's important to know about their sight?
Newborn sight is pretty basic. They like high-contrast human faces. A key development is binocularity, fusing the images from both eyes into one. That comes in around 4 months. Full color vision is usually there by 7 months. We tell parents, get close, let them see your face, let them touch things. That's how they learn.
Okay, let's bring this into practice. Part 4, the nursing process. The text gives examples of nursing diagnoses. Let's take ineffective breastfeeding. What are the first steps?
Well, if the baby isn't gaining weight well, the first thing is teaching mom to recognize hunger cues early, before the baby is frantic. Then, assessing the latch is critical. Are they swallowing audibly? Is mom having nipple pain?
And watching the scales.
Definitely. Aiming for that 15 to 30 grams per day gain after the first couple of weeks.
What if the diagnosis is imbalanced nutrition?
Yeah.
Less than body requirements in an older infant? What's the guidance on juice?
Juice is almost always a no. Nurses really need to advise parents to limit it drastically or just cut it out. It's empty calories, fills them up so they don't take enough milk or formula.
So the intervention is usually
More frequent milk feeds, maybe increasing volume, or starting solids appropriately if they're ready, not relying on juice.
And for psychosocial issues, like risk for impaired attachment, how do we support bonding?
We really encourage things that promote connection, that in-face position parent and baby face-to-face eye contact, responding promptly to the baby's cues, which builds that trust we talked about with Erikson, and just verbally praising the parent's positive interactions.
Safety becomes huge once they're mobile. Risk for injury. What are the absolute must-knows for car and crib safety?
Non-negotiables. Car safety. Rear facing for the entire first year minimum, often longer now. Always in the back seat, ideally the center. Absolutely never the front seat with an airbag.
And cribs.
Crib slats can't be wider than a soda can, about 6 centimeters. Always back to sleep on a firm mattress to reduce SID's risk. And the crib needs to be totally empty. No bumpers, no blankets, no stuffed animals, no pillows. Empty.
And choking hazards become a real fear as they explore with their mouths.
Huge area for guidance. The rule of thumb is, if it can fit through a toilet paper roll core, it's a potential choking hazard. Specifically, things like whole grapes, hot dog pieces, nuts, popcorn, raw carrots chunks. These are high risk unless cut into tiny, tiny pieces. And we strongly advise against infant walkers too, major fall risk.
Okay, part 5. Promoting healthy nutrition and habits. We know exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months is the goal. If formula is used, what's the warning about cow's milk?
Yeah, straight cow's milk is a definite no-no in the first year. The nutrient balance is wrong. It's low in iron just when the baby's iron stores for mom are running out around 4 to 6 months.
And it's hard on their kidneys?
It can be. The protein and mineral load is too high for their immature kidneys. If not breastfeeding, it has to be iron-fortified formula.
When it comes to starting solids, you mentioned readiness cues. What's the key physiological sign we look for, more reliable than just age?
It's the disappearance of the tongue extrusion reflex. That's the reflex where they automatically push anything solid out of their mouth with their tongue.
When did that usually fade?
Typically around 4 to 6 months. If it's still strong, they're just not ready for spoon feeding. They also need to have decent trunk control, be able to sit up with support.
And once they are ready, how do we introduce new foods? Any absolute no-nos early on?
Start slow. Usually iron-fortified infant cereal, like rice cereal, mixed with breast milk or formula is first. Then introduce other foods, but only one new food every 3 to 5 days.
To watch for allergies.
Exactly. As for forbidden foods, early on, definitely no honey before age 1 because of the botulism risk. And generally advised to hold off on things like egg whites, citrus fruits, strawberries, wheat, and cow's milk until later in the first year, again, due to allergy potential or digestion issues.
What about cups? Sippy cups seem universal.
Cups can be introduced around 6 months, but those popular no-spill sippy cups, well, they make the child suck, much like a bottle.
Which isn't great for teeth.
Right. It keeps liquids, often sugary ones, in contact with the teeth longer, increasing cavity risk. Better to encourage regular open cups or maybe spout-style cups that require sipping, not sucking.
Okay, let's wrap with 2 really common parent worries. Colic and spitting up. What's the quick guidance on colic?
Colic is rough. It's usually defined as intense crying for more than 3 hours a day, more than 3 days a week, often in the late afternoon or evening. The good news, it typically resolves by itself around 3 months.
So the nurse's role is mainly support.
Mostly support and reassurance. Teach soothing techniques, swaddling, gentle motion, white noise. And crucially, reassure parents it's not their fault and it will pass.
And the baby who spits up all the time? The happy spitter.
Yeah, spitting up is super common and usually totally normal if the baby is gaining weight well and having plenty of wet diapers, like 6 or more a day.
So if they're thriving, it's okay.
If they're thriving, it's more of a laundry issue than a medical one. Simple things can help. Smaller, more frequent feedings, burping often, keeping them upright for about 30 minutes after eating.
All right, so we've covered a huge amount, this incredible physical transformation, the step-by-step building of motor and cognitive skills, the critical foundation of trust, and all the practical nursing advice around safety and nutrition.
It's a packed year, and if you really think about it, connecting Erikson's trust versus mistrust happening right alongside Piaget's development of object permanence and the baby forming deep attachments, it leads to a really profound question.
Which is,
Well, if trust is built on consistency in meeting needs, what happens on a deeper level to the actual architecture of their emotional and cognitive world if that consistency isn't there during this critical first year? What are the potential lifelong echoes of early inconsistency or neglect? The stakes, as we said at the start, are just incredibly high.
that really puts the importance of this period and our role as nurses into perspective. A powerful thought to end on. Thanks so much for guiding us through all this.
My pleasure. And thank you all for joining us from the Last Minute Lecture team.